speak. If there's others, if you can fill them out, but I'm gonna ask Mr. Caruth and Ms. Dabney to do the presentation first, which may answer questions. And then after their presentation, before board comments and questions, we'll hear from the public.
Thank you, President Pratt, members of the board. As you mentioned, this is a study item, and I just, Mrs. Dabney's been leading a broad community committee to help push into this issue and try and find a reasonable resolution moving forward. Before she jumps in, I just want to say, we held our leadership meeting this morning at Desert Willow Elementary School, and Desert Willow was our third school that we opened. I arrived in 1995. It was the year I arrived here, and I remember the excitement and angst when that first school in Rio Rancho opened, and how that was exciting for that community, but also was a real transition point for what Vail had been as a rural community to one that was sharing the school space now with a suburban community in Rio Ranch. I watched all those homes go up along the back fence of Desert Willow when I was there. And it got me thinking about this process. We have long held the value in Vail of valuing parents and parents' choice. It's in our mission statement. It's what our first guiding principle. As we grow and as we continue to grow, it has always been some tension in how to honor that choice and honor parents and their wishes, and being able to adjust to growth and do that in a reasonable way. And I would love to tell you, over the years, I have been, with the exception of the Desert Willow one, which is already there, I think I've been a part of every boundary adjustment in Vail since that time period. And I would love to tell you that every time we do that, there's a perfect solution. The truth is, there's just not a perfect solution. But we take it really seriously and look at it. We use those values that were created a long time ago as our lens to push into that. And so we know, and Mrs. Dabney will get into more details, we know that the issue of high school choice has been around for a long time, and we want to preserve the ability to have high school choice for parents. And we also know that we are continuing to grow as a community, and how are we reasonably and rationally bringing forth recommendations to balance that a little bit. So just want to lay that out as a kind of some umbrella statements as Mrs. Dabney dives into more of the details around the specifics of the committee. Mrs. Dabney.
Thank you, President Pratt, Mr. Cruz, the members of the board. We know that there is a few enrollment issues that we needed to examine. And to do that, we brought together a really, really great committee. Our committee was made up of site council parents from our high schools and our middle schools, and then also some staff members like our director of transportation, and some of our principals of sites that will most likely be impacted by any recommended proposal or change. And I just want to point out that the committee members, specifically our parent representatives, are also members that live in neighborhoods that are impacted by the recommendations. And so it's very personal to them. Also having been in the district for many years and knowing when and going through those attendance boundary changes or proposals around that, they're emotional, and just acknowledge that. And the committee acknowledged that as well and understood the gravity of the recommendation. And we're very purposeful and mindful in the decisions that were made within the committee. So I just want to make sure that our governing board has that information as well. Really, the purpose of our committee was to focus and help find a solution for the pressure point that we had we have at Mica Mountain High School. The reality is that the transportation zone of Mica Mountain High School is too large, and it's filling the school beyond the school's capacity. And so it's an issue that has resulted in Mica Mountain not being a viable choice during high school choice for families that live outside of the Mica Mountain Transportation Zone. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's a reality. The committee was really charged with looking at that and seeing what possible solutions could be out there to address that. The other important aspect of what the committee was charged with was maintaining our value of parental choice and ensuring that parents have the ability to make a choice that they feel is the best fit high school for their child. And how can we balance that and balance enrollment and address that Mica Mountain piece. So that was our purpose. So what the committee did is before we even started diving into the actual problem, we developed guiding values as a committee to really help guide and use it as a lens as we make decisions and recommendations. And I feel like the guiding values that the committee developed really do speak to what the goals of the committee were. So the first was being community minded, that the committee was striving for solutions that are, one, fiscally responsible, fair, and serve the broader good, knowing that there were members on the committee that would be personally impacted by whatever decision was made. And also, like Mr. Cruz said, recognize that no solution is perfect. I believe if there was a perfect solution out there, we'd be doing that already. So there's not a perfect solution, but what can we do to kind of fix the issues that we're seeing? The other reality is that all of our high schools are A schools. They're A rated by the Arizona Department of Education. They're all A+. They have the A+ School of Excellent designation. We have excellent high schools. So we also wanted to value the schools, our high schools' unique strengths, their excellence, but also recognize that students thrive best where their needs and the school's strengths align. And that's really kind of the heart of parental choice, right? The other guiding value was to be intentional and transparent with communication. There's a lot of background information that goes into how decisions are made and why decisions are made. So how can we be transparent with that communication and clear? The other guiding value that was, I think, really important too is we've gone through this process a couple times. So when Mica Mountain was being built, we had to determine how would we balance Cienega and Mica Mountain in terms of enrollment and what that looks like. And that's where the transportation zone idea came into being. There was a committee that met to do that. There was another committee that met 3 years ago because there were still some issues. And so that committee tried to solve some of those issues. So there's been some historic work that's already been worked on with this issue. So we wanted to be thoughtful of the work that's already been done, but also what other ideas are out there to help solve this. And then the biggest one I think that was really important to our committee was maximizing choice. We really, the goal was to create or strengthen a system that gives parents the best possible choice for their first choice option or their second choice option for high schools. That's was really, really important to the committee. So we use these guiding values to look at all potential ideas and all potential solutions to this issue. And we looked at several. So some of the key findings, although the high school choice process is working pretty well right now, because we know that 89% of our families received their first high school choice option, which is a really high percentage. And currently 10% are receiving their second choice option. But we know that Mica Mountain is currently over capacity and that transportation zone was too large. This is the reality. Another reality, and this was a point where the committee had a lot of discussion about, was that the flex zone currently is ineffective, and it's just calling a spade. Families that live in the flex zone really don't have Mica Mountain as a choice unless they have a sibling that attends or some other avenue that way. There's really not a choice. We don't have, because the transportation zone is so large, for the last, out of the last 4 years, for 2 of those years, we've not been able to do a lottery in Mica Mountain. So families in the flex zone haven't really even had a chance to get their name in there to be considered for Mica Mountain. The other reality was that what we've heard through the high school choice process and through families that were on the committee or parent members that live in the flex zone, that there is this feeling of we have access in theory to 2 high schools with transportation, but we really don't have a priority to either. And so that flex zone idea just didn't come to fruition, I think, with the intent of the committee originally who that idea came from. The other reality that we faced for the first time this last high school choice round was we had 1% of our families receiving their 3rd high school choice option, which we had never had before. That ends up being 16 students. So the 16 students that received their 3rd choice option. And the analogy that the committee used around that was if you go to a restaurant and you have this, dinner or this item you want to order on the menu and that's in your mind, and you go to order that item and the server says, "Oh, I'm sorry, we don't have that available tonight." A little frustrating, a little irritating. Pick something else on the menu. You give that item and the server says, "Oh, I'm sorry, we don't have that either." Then by the time you get to that 3rd item, you're frustrated, you're mad. And we want to avoid that with our high school choice issue or the high school choice process. And so this was the first year, this past year, that we had families in that category. So we want to try and eliminate that as much as we possibly can. So the committee worked really hard on vetting different ideas. They vetted, do we just adjust the transportation zone? We've tried that. We did that 3 years ago and we're doing this work again. It didn't work last time. The other reality is that flex zone, like I said, there's a feeling that the flex zone doesn't have priority to either large comprehensive high school. So we looked at that. We looked at full high school choice. Do we just do away with transportation zones altogether? That was not a popular idea amongst the committee for a couple reasons. One is the cost associated with it. It would at a minimum require 4 new buses and 4 additional drivers. Just with that piece alone, it's about $1.2 million. The other reality when you have a full high school choice kind of model is it also increases the likelihood that more families are going to get that 3rd choice option. And that was really important to the committee to avoid. So that was not a popular idea. The other idea is, do we do attendance boundaries for the 2 large comprehensive high schools and have a home school assigned if you want a large comprehensive high school option, knowing that we have all of our other high school options available with transportation provided, Andrada, Empire, Bill Academy, the Vic. So as we kind of fleshed out some of those ideas, the committee landed on attendance boundaries, providing or establishing attendance boundaries for the 2 large comprehensive high schools. We used our values that were created to help get to that decision, and also the enrollment data that our committee spent a lot of time analyzing and looking through. So just to give you some kind of an idea, and you're very familiar with this map, this is the current transportation zone broken up by Cienega High School, which is the yellow section. The green section is the flex zone, which is Rita Ranch. And then the blue section is Mica Mountains transportation zone. It includes the Houghton Corridor. It looks big, but there's a huge area in that doesn't have any homes or potential homes growth in the future. But it's the Houghton Corridor and the I-10 corridor, I-10 in Wilmont, I-10 in Cole. Okay, that's the current. The proposed neighborhood assignments based on the committee's recommendation looks like this. So the yellow is Cienega. The blue there is Mica Mountain. So what this proposal changes is that Rita Ranch would no longer be a flex zone. They would have an assigned school of Cienega, and it changes the I-10 in Wilmont, I-10 in Cole neighborhoods to Cienega. The rest of the neighborhoods that were Mica Mountain under the transportation zone remained the same. Okay, that's what that looks like. So how did the committee get to that? Well, we actually had breakouts or little placards of each neighborhood and how many students were in that neighborhood, how many current high school students are in that neighborhood, how many 8th graders are in that neighborhood, 7th graders and 6th graders. We actually broke Rita Ranch into 4 sections. So the committee, as they were grappling with what type of attendance boundary to build, there was an option to place different parts of Rita Ranch in different attendance boundaries. But we have done attendance boundaries in Vail many times throughout our history. And we do have some kind of norms that have guided those decisions. One of the norms is to create the least disruptive option that gets the desired impact or the needed outcome as possible. One of the other norms is to work hard to keep cohorts of students together. So if we have students that all go to middle school together, doing our best to try and keep those cohorts together. We know in the high school choice process, one of factors that's really important to kids is I want to go to the same high school that my friends go to. Now that's not always the best, right, reason, but kids think that way. And so we try to keep those cohorts together as much as possible. And then thirdly, to consider more established neighborhoods over newer neighborhoods or future areas of growth. So those are those kind of tried and true norms that we've used as we've developed attendance boundaries in Vail. So the committee used those norms, the guiding values that were created to try and create an attendance boundary that maximizes choice and balances enrollment amongst our 2 large comprehensive high schools. There was several groups, each group created their mock attendance boundary, and it was pretty amazing to see that they were very, very similar. And after discussion, came to consensus really easily on what that would look like, what that recommendation would be. We also had a kind of a scorecard we used that where each group's idea was scored based on those norms, based on our values, and tried to find a solution that had the highest score with those things, with those items. So that's what it looked like. So what does this actually mean when we are talking numbers with kids? So in this graph, we have Cienega High School, Mica Mountain High School. We have what the current 9th grade classes. So at Cienega, it's 459. And Mica Mountain, it's 366. We have the efficiency capacity. That's the number when the school is operating at peak. And this is the freshman class. But that's the number that when schools are operating at peak efficiency. So classrooms are full, every classroom's in use. The analogy or the phrase that we use, it's like Thanksgiving full. So the efficiency capacity for the freshman class at Cienega is 525, and at Mica it's 337. So you can see with Mica Mountain, we're way over that Thanksgiving full already. I mean, that's the crux of this issue here. When we take into account the changes that are being proposed with the attendance boundary and the students that are coming out of those neighborhoods, knowing that we have about 40% of our freshman class choose one of our other high schools. They choose Empire and draw out of Vail Academy or Vic. We know that 40% of our total freshman class chooses those other options. So taking that 40% out, what do those numbers look like? So our projected 9th grade class, we're projecting about 476 at Cienega. And at Mica Mountain, we're projecting about 216. So what that does, because Mica Mountain can go to comfortably, their efficiency capacity is 337. They're pretty happy sitting at 330. That opens up about 120 spaces available for families that don't live within the Mica Mountain attendance boundary to actually have Mica as a choice. Now, there wouldn't be transportation offered if after a year grandfather period, but it would actually be a choice. Whereas right now, the flex zone families, It's not even a choice. It's not even something that's viable. Now we know that some of that 120 students is going to go to siblings because the law and our policy gives siblings priority. So if a family lives in, let's say, Desert Stone, one of the neighborhoods that's currently Mica Mountain Transportation Zone, but is being recommended to move to Cienega attendance boundary. If a Desert Stone sibling is a sophomore and there is a Desert in the siblings an 8th grader, that student would be able to also attend Mica Mountain. So we know there's going to be some spots that are taken up with siblings. We are also looking at putting some guardrails and caps around staff children and what that priority looks like. The committee is still working through that process, but that will also leave potential. We're estimating between 50 and 100 seats available for families that live outside of Mica Mountain to be able to go to Mica Mountain. Now, if that interest exceeds what the space allows, then it would be like a lottery system. But the last 2 years, we haven't been able to do a lottery at Mica. So it provides an opportunity. So that's what the numbers break down to. Our choice process would look very similar as it has in the past. We will have our high school choice portal. We will have that portal designed if the board moves forward with a proposal such as this, so that there is very clear delineation that if you live in the Cienega High School attendance boundary, these are your 3, you can choose your top 3 choices. If you're interested in attending Mica Mountain and there's space available, indicate it here, and we will work through that process. If that, again, that interest exceeds space, a lottery would follow our normal lottery process. We've done lotteries for years in our high school choice process, so we would follow that. And then our timeline would look very similar to how it has in the past. So that's the committee's proposal and recommendation and why we got there and how we got there. Again, I'd just like to reiterate just the very thoughtful work that the committee put into this. It impacts them personally. And we know that there's not a perfect solution, and we know this is hard. And there's an emotional response to it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dabney. I think we'll just leave it there for now for the conclusion of our background, and there's a call to the public on that. I'm happy to respond to any questions after that from the board.
So we'll, at this time, we'll give the microphone to Rebecca Bannon. Yes. Okay. And we respectfully ask you to just keep your comments to 3 minutes. Sure.
Hi. First of all, I want to say thank you to the board and to Superintendent Cruz for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Rebecca Fannin. I currently have a sophomore and a junior in Mica Mountain, and I reside in the Sycamore Park neighborhood. Now I am here speaking on our family's behalf, but if our community Facebook page is any indication, I believe that some of my concerns are echoed within our community. I want to start by saying that this is not an issue for us personally of wanting to go to Mica over Cienega or Cienega over Mica. I am incredibly proud of all of the high schools in our district, and I'm very proud to be a part of Vail. One of the biggest problems or concerns that I have is we talk about parent choice. And while I appreciate the opportunity to choose what school my child goes to, access to transportation feels a lot like access to choice. And by removing access to transportation to the Sycamore Park community and other communities, it feels like we're having our choice removed as well. Alongside with that, I kind of feel a sense of deja vu. So our community went through this 6 years ago when we were told that we were going to be changed out, and instead of Cienega, our students would now move to Mica. And we had a sophomore and a junior in Cienega at that time. So the concern I have is my junior will be taken care of. He'll be able to continue as a senior. He'll be able to have transportation. My sophomore will not. Last time this happened, we figured out a way with our family and friends to make sure that she could be transported every day back and forth to school and to after school activities. But here we are again, only 6 short years later. And my concern becomes, we did everything we could to make sure that our students could continue at that high school. This is a time during high school when our children are going through a lot, social, emotional. And asking them to change in the middle is difficult. Anytime we make this change, there's the potential that our students are going to have to face this. So I guess my big question in this situation is, if we do this again so soon, what kind of assurances do we have that this time it's going to work well for us? What is the difference this time between 6 years ago when we went through this? That's it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Fannin. So this actually is on the agenda, so at this time we can answer questions. So we can follow up also with emails. Do you have any comments at this point, Mr. Cook?
Not at this time, other than to say, one, I hear you, we hear you, and either Mrs. Dabney or I will contact you directly and follow up specifically. And just to reiterate that we're looking at transportation and having at least 1 year grandfather transportation, and just acknowledging I think I've had the opportunity to participate in the committee as well, and several members of the committee, one are in the impacted zone, and two have been on 2 committees to try and solve this, and they're really they're as parents, and they're really zeroed in on water solutions that are going to be something that's reasonable at a reasonable length of time. That's assurance. I can say, having done boundaries in our community for a long period of time, once we get out past 5 or 7 years, the crystal ball just gets a little murky because it depends on where growth trends happen across the school district. But we're really looking at trying to do something that is a longer term solution.
I appreciate you coming tonight and not only voicing concerns for your own family, but also, like you said, representing other families. And the exact concerns that you're bringing up are things that we have talked about. We studied this item as well in our study session right before the board meeting, and those are all concerns that we've been thinking about. So thank you for coming. And we will, Mr. Cruz or Ms. Dabney, myself, somebody will follow up with you as well. Thank you. Are there board, I know that we studied this in the study session, but are there any other comments, questions from board members? Mr. Buster.
I hope you forgive my naivete, but I'm hearing that we had an evaluation, or we had this committee come together 6 years ago, 3 years ago, this year. Is it a reasonable expectation that we're looking at 3 years before this committee comes together again? Or are we looking at doing this maybe next year to develop some lessons learned and see the growth spurts and what direction they're going in, so that we can incorporate it maybe the following year and make it better and evolve each and every year?
Thank you, Mr. Buster. And just put some kind of context around that. 6 years ago was when a group of community members were looking at how to create some kind of balance to open Mica Mountain High School. So it was when Mica Mountain High School opened. That group did their best at that time and tried something novel with a transportation zone, to use a transportation zone, and something novel to create a flex zone as a part of that process. And that was the recommendation. 3 years ago, we were starting to see that, again, I don't want to lose the sight of, we have historically had between 89 and 92% of families receive their first choice. So I don't want to lose sight of that, but we were recognizing we're starting to, in essence, the flex zone was not an opportunity that it was frankly being advertised, or that it was conceptualized to be. And so the group came together. We also knew that we were going to see a new significant growth in the Rocking K area of our school district along Old Spanish Trail, roughly 4,000 to 5,000 homes in its current phase. And so we needed to do something about that. We got together, and I will simply say this. I think those people who participated in that committee last time wish that they'd taken it one step further this time and done this. I think the kind of the easier piece was to rule out the Rocking K folks who are going to Cienega, and you probably should have taken one more step forward. So if I were the rear view mirror test, I think that would be the rear view mirror test on that decision. where we are currently with this decision, to be plain, it's small enough. Two things about the recommendations being considered. One, all of the area that is contained in the what would become the Mica Mountain boundary are currently developed homes, and sort of turn that over. There are no new planned developments in the boundary with which that area that would exist within that area. So we're not expecting new growth in that area. The pressure that we have, frankly, along the Houghton or the I-10 corridor, the Wilmot Pole I-10 corridors, we have new growth that's happening in that area currently. And so to be able to continue to absorb new growth in an area that was already overcrowded, that was a pressure point. So I think to be able to say that the area is an established neighborhood where unless there is state land within that area that's considered for sale, which that's going to be a long way down the road, we're not anticipating new growth. So the numbers that are there are likely to stay pretty stable. So I think there's confidence in that. What I would say also is that we someday, some superintendent and some board is going to have to make some decisions once state land is sold along the Houghton corridor about how to expand that. And someday probably many of us on this board will have to make a decision about when to add space at Mica Mountain for future growth. I mean, we're probably in a window of somewhere between 4 and 7 years of needing to add additional space if current growth continues. So we'll need to look at what additional space seats at Mica Mountain, and when we do that, how might we look at expanding some areas of growth around that school. I don't, it's way too early to decide where that might come from or what those decisions are, but that would be again, in a window 4 to 7 years out. I think 4 years is probably on the early side of that. And question hasn't been raised, but it's been raised to us in emails and some other things, is when is space going to be made available again? When are we going to add the high school space? So I'll just continue to pull on that for a second. Two things. One, we can't build new space until we qualify for new space by a square footage, by a number of students that we have in high school relative to the square footage that we have. We received some assistance through the state, through the school facility board to help build that space. We're not there yet. The early window probably be somewhere in that 4 to 7 year window where we are currently. The way that the state is currently funding that space, there's no way that we can build that space without local supplemental funds that would need to be drawn through a bond. So the community would need to agree to raise bond funds to help build that space. So those two things would need to intersect in the future. We're not there yet.
Let's do it.
What can you tell us about open enrollment students in the 8th grade choice process and their availability, not just at Mica Mountain, but Vail schools in general?
Yeah.
Particularly at that 8th grade level moving into 9th grade.
Thank you, President Pratt. Mrs. Tippett, just so I'm clarifying, when you're saying open enrollment, you're talking out of district open enrollment or in district open enrollment?
Out of district open enrollment, yeah.
Out of district. So our current numbers for out of district open enrollment across the school district is about 8% of our student population. And to put that in contrast, Tanque and Catalina Foothills, two high performing school districts like Vail, their out of district open enrollment is in the high 40s, low 50s. We don't do that. We open enroll students where we have some capacity to do that, to help with the efficiency of running at those schools. Frankly, having schools run at an efficiency level provides programming for students and families who live in the school district. That's how we approach that. And the flip of that is we know that we pride ourselves on school choice in the Vail School District and having choice options for parents. We also know that there's choices beyond the Vail School District for parents to choose. And we probably have somewhere between 8 and 12% of families who live in Vail who have children, school-age children, who are choosing something other than the Vail School District. So it's kind of what we view it as, it's a bit of a wash. I think if we were to look at percentages, somewhere between the 8 and 12% number across the school district would be roughly where we want to be. For our highly desirable schools, Mica Mountain being one of them, we don't allow out of district open enrollment that we know of. I will say though, two things. One, we can only go on the information that parents provide us, if we know information, well, let me turn this over. Parents overwhelmingly do the right thing and are trying to do good things for their kids. So I want to make that as a statement. But if there's something that smells funny, we investigate. The other thing is, it is by law, we have, if you are at a school and you leave our school district and move to, Houghton and Speedway, you have a right to stay in the school where you are. That's open enrollment law in Arizona now. So we have a number of families where that's the situation currently. They were here with us and they've moved and they want their children to continue. So even in our highly desirable schools like a Mica Mountain, there's a handful of kids that are in that capacity. At a school like Cienega, we were looking at the numbers just today and affirming them. We have about 75 students who are out of district open enrollment freshmen in that class. We advertised and wanted them to come because that helps with programming and provides additional sections of elective courses and all kinds of things by the capacity. And so we filled to that amount at that school. So we'll, until we get to a place across the school district with high school space, it's highly likely that some of our high schools will continue to accept some open enrollment. But at a school like, frankly, Empire and Mica Mountain, it would be extremely rare unless it's an upper grade level where there's space.
But in the 8th grade school choice process.
Thank you for the clarification. If you are a current 8th grader and you are an open enrollment student, out of district open enrollment student, you get basically put into a different bucket and told, thank you, indicate your choices, but you're waiting until we sort out everybody else. And we let those families know right up front. They may not know until the 1st of June. Is that accurate, Mr. Hurley? Yeah. So they don't know right away. They're put into I would say a third bucket, so to speak, of families. They don't get any priority over in-district families. In-district families get sorted first, get their choices sorted first. And then we say, where is their space available? And if we can accommodate their choice, we accommodate their choice. If we can't accommodate their choice, we say we can't do that. You can choose these 2 schools. And that's what they can choose from.
So to summarize, no out of district 8th grader is going to be in the same lane as in district students as they're making their choices.
That's correct.
Are there any other comments or questions?
I just had one more. I really like the way that you were summarizing that, and so I was listening to that. Sorry if it comes back to me.
Yeah, if it comes back, just tell me. I think this is such an important issue. I appreciate everyone who served on the committee. We had one committee member come and speak to us during our board study session. And just hearing all the factors that they weighed in on and that they took into consideration. I thought was so thoughtful. I love how you, well, I don't love it, but it's a reality that there is no perfect solution here. This is a very difficult problem. And I think what's hard is that it isn't choice for most families, especially if you're in the Reed Ranch area. And so trying to make adjustments so that it truly is a choice for, or it is an option for families to choose from. The flip side of that is that we have families that we want kids to be connected. We want them to be fully integrated in the programs in their school with the teachers at their school. And I love that you said that's essentially no shade on the other high schools. It's the fact that whatever school it is, we hope that you are putting down roots and that you guys are fully engaged and invested in those sites. And so I mean, I have a high schooler right now. I think it would be highly disruptive if he needed to switch schools. He's not at Mica Mountain, I just have to say that too. But so we understand that. So trying to make some really difficult decisions that we know impact families and students. So thank you for your patience as we study this item, and thank you for coming and speaking to the board.
Yeah, I'll just wrap up, we're still listening. I mean, and people have been emailing and we're trying to respond to those that are emailing us. We communicated this to current eighth grade families yesterday, and based on some of the feedback that we received from those emails and other things, we created a frequently asked questions document. We want to try and be clear with what we're presenting and why. Ideally, we wouldn't have to do this. I mean, we didn't march into this process with excitement. We marched in because we knew we needed to try and fix something that needed to be adjusted. And we were also incredibly mindful that the decisions that we made, that we tasked the committee with helping us decide. Because we're operating at a pretty high level already, we could push into decisions that would make it worse, not better. So we were really mindful of that, and the committee's mindful of that, and trying to look at all of those issues. And to the best of our ability, of that committee, I think I can say they've done that. The other thing I want to say, and I've people asked me and Mrs. Dabney in comments, who was on the committee and how did that happen? I mean, we had site council parents represented from all of our middle schools that were there. At least 2 were invited. And there were parents in that room on that committee who are directly impacted by the decision that committee brought forward. And after analyzing the information and really turning it over and studying it, were unanimous in what they're bringing forward, understanding that the decision would impact their family. And I think that's a credit to the work that Mrs. Dabney led us through with creating the values first and trying to look at what the solutions are. It's not perfect, and again, perfection is not obtainable. It's really trying to do the best with what we have. And to your point, I really hear that is how do we provide something that we can reasonably say is stable for as long as possible.
I did have one other question. I know that this has been communicated to current 8th grade families. Have we communicated this to current Mica Mountain families, just because they are impacted for transportation?
We have not. Only 8th grade. We will certainly do that. And to the point, yeah, right now we're considering 1 year of grandfathered transportation. Most families, that will get them through their into their sophomore year and into their junior year. So, but yes, we will certainly do that.
I think that would be good, just to communicate it so families have that information. Hey, any other comments or questions? No. Thank you. Our next agenda item is the